Welcome to Chris Parkin Shooting Sports. Today I'm going to run you through the stages of how I clean one of my centrefire rifles. The first stage is to check the rifle is unloaded, and let's remove the bolt. This rifle's a 6.5 Creedmoor, so I'm going to use a 6.5mm jag, an appropriately sized patch. Patches available from all sorts of different manufacturers in different sizes, thicknesses and shapes. It's best to get several, try which ones are best fitting your barrel. You don't want a nice firm fit, not too easily to push through, but you don't want to be having to force it through or hammer it through. Spear point jags pierce the patch in the centre so it can't slip off the side. Different solvents come with their own instructions of how they prefer you to use them and how they're going to work chemically to clean your barrel. I tend to decant the small large glass bottles into smaller dropper bottles because it allows me to put single drips onto the patch. To protect the rifle's action from mechanical damage and also to keep solvent mess at a minimum, I'm going to use a bore guide. This slots through the action into the chamber and locks in position. You'll also note I've left the scope caps on because we don't want solvent splashing on these, and we also don't want a spear point jag going into the glass. The dampened patch now goes in to the bore guide and will slide all the way through the barrel and come out of the muzzle. This can bring quite a lot of dirt and debris with it, so I often use something called a patch catcher. This is a plastic box which slots over the barrel, elasticates in place and stops anything dropping out or spraying everywhere over your bench and work area. I'll repeat the process with several wet patches through the barrel, each of which will bring out differing colours of bore fouling. You can use an all-in-one barrel cleaning solvent, or there are specific solvents, one for copper, one for carbon fouling, which is the residue of the burnt powder. After the first few patches, which you can see bringing out both the blue copper residue and the black carbon fouling, leave the barrel to soak for a while and allow the solvents to work their magic. There's no specifically right or wrong way to clean a rifle barrel. There are certainly mistakes you don't want to make, like damaging the bore itself using a dirty cleaning rod, so always make sure the cleaning rod and all the tools are wiped clean with an oily rag. The first patch will be very tight, but subsequent patches with solvent impregnated into them will become more free moving in the bore. Work from a single end, preferably the breech, so you're not likely to damage the very delicate crown. Don't try to pull a patch back through the crown once it's emerged from the muzzle. I generally put 4 to 5 wet patches through a barrel, and depending on how much it's being used and how much of fouling is coming out, I'll then leave it to soak for between 10 and 30 minutes. Here you can see a lot of the carbon fouling is starting to shift. If patches aren't affecting the fouling, you can use brushes to scrub the bore. As well as mechanical friction to remove the fouling, the brush solvents also become aerated, so they're actually slightly stronger and dissolve the fouling a little bit more quickly. After waiting in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions, try a dry patch through the bore and see what emerges now. Here you can see the residue of a lot of the dissolved fouling. There's no such thing as a right or wrong way to clean a rifle barrel, but at some point you do need to learn how to do it, because the last thing you want to have to do is to be forced to do it by an emergency. The patches themselves tell the story of what's coming out of the bore. It's not always necessary to remove every single last trace of copper and fouling from a barrel, but it is important to remove moisture, and the fouling itself is slightly porous and will absorb moisture from the atmosphere. It's particularly important to clean a barrel when you come in from a cold atmosphere into a warm room, because condensation will form everywhere within the gun, and this is the moisture that particularly badly affects the barrels about 2 to 3 inches back from the crown, where moderators have been left on. Always remove your sound moderator after shooting. As you continue to pass wet patches, pores and then pass dry patches through the bore, you'll notice the level of fouling begin to diminish. Note the bluish colour of fouling is actually the way the solvent reacts with the copper, so be cautious of the fact that many of the tools used are phosphor bronze, so that they're softer than the steel, but this means you can get what are called false positives, where the solvent is actually dissolving the tool to some extent and not just the fouling in the barrel. Jags are available in different sizes to suit different calibers of rifle, so make sure you've got the correct jag for your caliber. Cleaning rods are also sized, and they have a range of calibers from which they'll work from and to. So there are generally small 17 and 20 caliber cleaning rods, 2.2 to 2.5 cleaning rods, and then 2.5 up to 2.64, which is 6.5mm. 30 caliber rods, and then go up to 3.38 caliber, or even bigger still. These are a selection of bore brushes which screw on similarly. This is actually a new one, but this one here you can see is stained blue by the copper solvent that's dissolved it over the years. I prefer using nylon brushes for everything because you don't get false positives with nylon brushes. After multiple patches have now passed through the barrel wet with solvent, this one's showing just the slightest blue tinge of colour from the copper. So we'll leave it to soak a little longer and put one last dry patch through and see if it's come completely clean. Still a slightly blue tinge, so I'm going to put another wet patch through and another soak for another 10 minutes before another dry patch. Always make sure you've got an absorbent cloth handy, because the last thing you want is solvent marks on a fine wooden stock. Also, it helps to clean the rod between each pass. Using a bore guide also helps keep solvent from spilling into the magazine or in the bolt lug abutments at the head of the action. Cleaning rod handles spin to allow the tight patch to rotate with the rifling as it passes through the barrel. As you continue to clean the rifle, you'll notice the cleaning rod becomes easier to push through the barrel. This is an indication that the fouling is clearing out. Always make sure that the cleaning rod is pushed in a straight line. Don't bend it and rattle it around if at all possible. After several cycles, probably depending on how many rounds you've actually fired, you'll start to get clean patches coming out of the bore. Depending on how fastidious you are, don't worry if you still seem to get tiny trace elements of fouling coming out of the barrel. Essentially, this is what we're looking for. You can see here the progression of the patches. That's where we started out, and here is where we're finishing. When you take the bore guide out, you'll notice just how much solvent is actually on it, even though you were being careful. So the next step is to clean any solvent from inside the action and the top of the magazine. You can buy specific action cleaning brushes as well as those for the abutments themselves. It's not too difficult though to roll up a clean rag and use it just to wipe the insides of the action clean. Give the bolt a wipe over with an oily cloth, but you don't generally need to do much more than that. Check the bolt lugs themselves are clean and there's no brass fouling residual. It's also worth cleaning the bolt face for similar brass fouling. I generally don't oil the bolt on a rifle, but will spray some preservative solvent onto the cloth. And then wipe the bolt clean with it. With another spray, I always make sure I clean the muzzle threads and the crown. Fouling on these can bake on quite hard over time. Although many modern rifles carry anti-corrosion coatings, I don't think it hurts just to wipe everything over with a very slightly oiled cloth. Human skin is itself corrosive, and you'll often see rusty red fingerprints left on bare metal surfaces after just a few hours in some situations. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that video. It's just a brief rundown of how I clean my rifles day to day. Anything more than cleaning and a wipe over with a cloth I would term as maintenance, and that's a different video entirely. Please like, subscribe and comment if you want to see more of my videos, and don't forget to click the notification bell to see the weekly uploads. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.